So stitch this and tell me something that white people aren't ready to hear.
We white women have an inferiority complex. The Negro women have a sort of reputation for being so beautiful. We're a little jealous of them.
I guess you just envy us colored people.
That black women were there to support me and to advise me, but not to rise above or become better than me. And that's why when this black teacher was way better and more talented than me, I felt some kind of way about it. Now, I'd imagine lots and lots more white women have also internalized the same idea, and that's why they feel okay stealing black women's content and not giving them any credit, because the black women are just there to advise them anyway. But most black women are natural leaders.
We're jealous. I think we're jealous because we would love to be that, I think, and we don't know how to break out of the indoctrination that we have been suppressed by our entire life.
Ladies and gentlemen, these are some of the wildest things I have heard white people say in my entire life about black people, and they are exposing themselves.
I think that white women are scared of black women because you challenge us in that way, and a lot of us don't like it. And that's why we fear you. It's because we fear what you make us face.
So I think we should all, as white women, just admit we're jealous of black women's hair.
The currency of whiteness is compliance, especially American westernized whiteness. The currency is compliance. And the reason that white women are so curious about you as a black woman in the South is because they are confronted with that fact, but they just don't know it. In their mind, when they see you, it triggers like this response of like non-compliance, like somebody's not complying. Like, what is she doing here? She's not supposed to be here. She's not complying with the order, and that threatens us. And I noticed this because I wasn't raised in the US, I was raised in Ukraine. We don't come face to face with racism a lot in Ukraine because there is no opportunity for it. It's pretty much like an all-white country, right? So that's not to say that racism wouldn't exist if given the opportunity. As soon as it is, it happens. As soon as it's given an opportunity. Like in the beginning of the war, when people were pushing black people off of trains, like to get on. It'll very much crop up there if it's given the opportunity to. I'm not saying that it's not a problem in Ukraine or other countries like it. People are racist, they just don't know it until they're actually confronted with having to deal with people of color. What I will say is because of that, because we don't have that dynamic of like slavery and segregation and like all of these things, that's why there's this common like sentiment in America about Slavic women that they're just built different, right? They may appear very feminine and like feminized or whatever, but you know, their husband is scared of them. They know that they actually control the entire dynamic kind of thing, right? Because you can only oppress women so much if there is no class below them, right? The only class that's below women in Ukraine are children. And we don't really have like a huge problem with homelessness or anything like that. There is not this multi-step hierarchy, right? There's only this power dynamic between men and women, but it's been balanced out pretty well, right? Like, yes, there are horrible Ukrainian men. I'm not denying that. Yes, some Ukrainian men are abusers and they use like religion and they use all sorts of things to abuse women. But on a large scale, what I grew up seeing was not skittish, abused women. I grew up seeing strong Slavic women because when there's nothing else to threaten women with other than like, oh, you're not going to get married or have a man or whatever, then you don't hold that much power as a man, especially in the courting stage, like in the dating stage. Like Slavic men are on their best behavior, and there's just as much stigma for divorce for men as there is for women. The dynamics are just a little different. They're a little bit more balanced out, I would say, between men and women. Now, where America differs is that because it's such a melting pot and like all of this, the hierarchy is just turned up to 11. I mean, white women are so obsessed with compliance and they're so obsessed with keeping their place in this hierarchy because there are levels that they don't want to be brought down to, right? One of those levels being you're going to be treated like a black woman. By that I mean you're going to be hypersexualized, you're going to be treated as a second-class citizen, you're going to be made up a bunch of narratives about, and you're going to be considered like unfeminine, unruly, and whatever, etc., etc. There's like so many layers to this, right? So the reason that they're curious or that they're threatened, and I mean curious is a very gentle word to use. Like I would say that they are threatened. Threatened because they feel like you're taking over. In the video that this comment was left on, this is what I talked about, right? White women in the American patriarchy are especially dangerous to black women because they are okay with the structure of the patriarchy because they gave up a lot to belong to it. And by that I mean they gave up their personalities, right? This is why they have plastic smiles and no joy in their eyes, because it's all about compliance. It's not about having your own personality. It's not about having your own goals, hopes, dreams. It's about compliance. The same thing that I noticed about women in America too. As a Ukrainian woman, like I was not so used to women just like hiding their joy, their surprise, their anger, especially. Like white women really hide their anger because that belongs to men. In this racially charged patriarchy, anger belongs to men, but also like black people are very demonized for their anger, especially black women, right? It's angry black women stereotype. So white women can't be that, right? If they want to keep their place in the hierarchy, which they have already worked really hard to get there and to keep. They don't want you coming along into their country club and being prettier than them, being wealthy on your own, like, because they had to give all that up. They had to give all that up. And that's why they're threatened by you. And the reason that they hover around you is because that's the only compliant way for them to make you feel unwelcome. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like Jordan Peele captured this really well in Get Out when he had the black people acting like white people, and it was so uncanny. That's because there is that difference. Especially in the case of Georgina, that's exactly what a white woman would look like in a black woman's body. It would be very uncanny. And the way that Georgina asserted her power was by always hovering around and being in people's business. And that's what white women do. Like, that's the most threatening that a white woman can get, is to just, you know, be there, just hovering and getting in your business. That's why there's the same like stereotype about, you know, youth pastors' wives and like pastors' wives in general, is that they just have this very disconcerting presence where with a smile on their face, they will look you dead in the eyes and say the most fucked up misogynistic shit so that they can continue propping up the patriarchy. Right? And it's just creepy. It's creepy how they act, because it's like, why are you saying all this with a smile on your face? Because of compliance. Because the compliance part of the white woman handbook says that you have to be pretty, smiling, quiet, not cause trouble, never get in the way of the men. And the most important thing you can do is to support the patriarchy and to make sure that the men have a clear path forward, because you're next in line. You're next in line. But it's like the men are never going to move out of your way, babe. They're never going to move out of your way. But white women still, like, they have this very particular relationship, especially white women in America. They have this very particular relationship to white men, to men in general, right? Which is why White Woman Whisperer got all this hate for pointing stuff out, and she got like demonetized, like her videos were getting reported. The white women were very vicious, but very quietly, you know, very quietly, in that very compliant way. And yet when a black man went on his platform and used his platform to speak up for White Woman Whisperer and to call white women out, the white women in his comments were very nice. They were very like, yes, like, well said, you know, they were feeling very called out. They were not reporting his videos. It's this very interesting relationship that white women have with the patriarchy. They feel like they're so close to the top that it makes sense for them to keep maintaining these kinds of statuses and behaviors. And I noticed this like right away about, you know, Western white women, is that they stifle themselves a lot. They control themselves a lot. Again, this was very well exemplified in Get Out, when the main white woman character, like, everything about her is just putting on an act so that what she can actually be is this very controlled, very meticulous, very collected psychopath. You know, like when she's just eating like a single Fruit Loop and drinking one single sip from the straw, like, that's all intentional. Like the fact that she has all of these like keepsakes of the previous boyfriends that she has lured over into this whole scheme, because she is not actually what she pretends to be. She pretends to be a real person with real feelings and pretends to like fit into the male gaze, and she fakes sympathy and she fakes empathy and she even can fake anger and all this stuff. But in reality, she's very self-controlled. She's very meticulous. She's very like determined. Like, she has a goal. She has an end goal in mind, and she's already planning out her next venture. And I noticed this a lot. Like, this was actually really shocking to me, because like in Ukraine, like, if a bitch doesn't like you, she doesn't like you. You know what I mean? There's not a whole lot of pretending. Like, everything is kind of out in the open. Like in America, it's like these white women will be so nice to your face. They will pretend like they want the best for you. They will pretend like they have empathy and sympathy and that they totally understand what you're going through, to turn around and literally stab you in the back and exercise their power over you. When my parents came here to America, they very specifically wanted to attend like an English speaking church so they could learn English faster. And so we went to this very conservative, like, little church, and it was just full of like the WASP demographic, and it was very creepy and uncanny trying to interact with these people like as a normal person. You never know what they're thinking. You never know what's behind their eyes. You never know what's behind their smiles. They'll like nod and agree as though they really hear you and like understand what you're saying, but really it's not that. They're just complying. They're just controlling themselves from saying what they really feel. And you could tell they didn't know what to do with us, because we were like by all means white, but they still saw us as below them. They still saw us as immigrants, and they would talk to us, you know, really slow. Even though my parents would respond back in normal speed and everything like that, they just couldn't help but treat us like second-class citizens. It was very unsettling, very uncanny. No matter what, in America, you are going to take your spot, you take your place in the hierarchy. Even if you refuse, other people will do it for you. They will place you where you belong. And in my opinion, at the end of the day, this all stems from the fact that whiteness is actually like a lack of things. Whiteness is more about what you're not and less about what you are. This is why white people have no culture, because culture is a thing that can be used to degrade people and to make them feel like they're less than. And that's why white people are like, oh, no, none of that. We don't do any of that. You know, the culture is very prim, proper, polite, and it's more based around what you don't do rather than what it is you do. And the things that you do are very performative and only exist to perpetuate a certain hierarchy. Really freaky observing it as a foreigner. Like, even though I know that, again, I'm white, I definitely like benefit from the system. And I'm definitely also not saying that Ukrainians would be better than any other white people if they were confronted with the real life implications of what American people have been presented with. But that's really the problem.
So this lady asks, this black lady, are white women really that scared of black women? And I'm going to say yes. And this is my opinion as a white woman who is 53 years old and has lived in the South in Georgia in my entire life. But it's not being scared, but it's a fear. And it's not a physical fear. It is the mental fear. It is what we see in you and what we see you doing and how it challenges us and the fear of that. So we see black women and we see how strong you are. We see you coming together as a community. We see you supporting each other. We see you supporting your community, supporting your families, supporting your children, going out and fighting for your rights, being authentic in your race and in your femininity. Anyway. And we're jealous. I think we're jealous because we would love to be that, I think, and we don't know how to break out of the indoctrination that we have been suppressed by our entire lives. And I'm not giving white women a pass, don't get me wrong, but I know I and most women have been told, white women have been told our entire lives, be quiet, know your place, be a good girl, don't rock the boat, don't be too much. And when you are any of those things, you are ostracized because you have rocked their boat. And that is what black women are. You rock our boat, our mental boat, because you challenge us to look at how we are deficient and not living in our truth, and it makes us uncomfortable. And people don't like to be uncomfortable. And it makes us start to question ourselves. And people don't like to question themselves. We would rather live in our little bubble of white supremacy and what we know and comfortableness. I know that's not a word. Than a lot of people would, white women would, rather than challenge themselves to grow and know more. Because it's easy. Doing the work is hard. It's really hard. I've been doing the work the past several years, and it's hard. It is hard admitting some truths about yourself and some truths about yourself as a white woman. So, yeah.
Most people globally have watched African American women and women of African descent on TV, and they think that that is how all African American women behave. So when they meet a woman who's educated, well-spoken, beautiful, well-manicured, they don't know how to handle it. They also are extremely jealous that their husbands, their fathers, their uncles, all of the men in their lives literally stare at you the entire time that you are out in a restaurant or wherever you are, market. They are highly attracted to women of African descent. White women do not know how to handle this. In America, I have experienced this in corporate America, but in Europe, you experience this in the markets.
Right? White women in the American patriarchy are especially dangerous to black women because they...
Something that Brittany Cooper says in Eloquent Rage is that white women's complicity and participation in state violence towards black people has a long and sordid history. She also highlights her belief that white women suffer from a type of narcissism that makes them see themselves as the most oppressed member of their gender. She highlights the ways that many white women deny racial power while claiming gender subjugation as a way to obfuscate and erase the ways that they are harming other members of other communities, namely black women. As she says so brilliantly, white women's tears and fears have a way that they can move patriarchal protection. And so white women can actually create harm. We see this often in workplaces, but then say, I am being harmed, then use tears to move a system in their favor. And because white womanhood is defined as everything that black womanhood is not, because white womanhood is seen as soft and protectable and demure, They are especially dangerous to Black women who are not systemically protected.